Alina Vasquez pushed a mop across the marble floor of the Hartwell Conservatory of Music. The water left long, wet lines on the white stone. She moved slowly, carefully, the way she had moved for 11 years in this same building. Her blue uniform was old and faded from too many washes. Her black shoes were comfortable but ugly. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun. She was 53 years old, and most days she felt invisible. The conservatory was one of the most famous music schools in the country. Rich families sent their children here to learn piano, violin, and other instruments. The building was old and beautiful, with high ceilings and tall windows. Paintings of famous musicians hung on the walls. Crystal chandeliers sparkled in the main hall. Everything about this place said money and success and dreams coming true. Alina was not part of that world. She was the woman who cleaned it every evening. She arrived at 6 o'clock when most students and teachers were leaving. She would nod at them politely, but they rarely nodded back. They walked past her like she was part of the furniture, like she was just another shadow in the hallway. Sometimes students would leave trash right next to the garbage can, as if dropping it inside was too much work. Sometimes professors would track mud across the floors she had just cleaned. They never apologized. They probably did not even see her. Alina did not complain. She had learned long ago that complaining changed nothing. She did her job quietly and well. She mopped the floors. She dusted the portraits. She cleaned the bathrooms. She emptied the trash cans. She polished the wooden benches where students sat waiting for their lessons. And every night she cleaned the grand recital hall. The recital hall was the heart of the conservatory. It had red velvet seats that could hold 500 people. The ceiling was painted with angels playing harps and trumpets. The stage was made of dark, polished wood, and in the center of that stage sat a Steinway grand piano. It was black and shiny and worth more money than Alina would make in 10 lifetimes. She spent extra time cleaning around that piano. She wiped down its surface with a soft cloth. She made sure no dust touched its perfect finish. She was careful never to touch the keys. The keys were for students and teachers. The keys were for people who belonged here, not for a cleaning lady with rough hands and an accent that made people think she was stupid. But Alina had a secret she had kept for more than 30 years, a secret that hurt so much she tried never to think about it. Alina Vasquez had once been a piano player, and not just any piano player. She had been one of the best young pianists in Cuba. She was born in Havana in 1972. In a small apartment with thin walls and noisy neighbors. Her father worked at a factory. Her mother sewed clothes for extra money. They were poor, but they were happy. And from the moment Alina was born, music filled their home. Her father loved to sing old Cuban songs. Her mother hummed while she worked. The radio played constantly. When Alina was 5 years old, her parents saved enough money to buy an old piano from a neighbor. It was out of tune and some keys stuck. But to Alina it was the most beautiful thing in the world. She sat at that piano for hours every day. She taught herself to play simple songs just by listening to the radio and copying what she heard. Her parents watched her with amazement. Their little girl had a gift. By the time she was 8, Alina was taking lessons from a retired music teacher who lived nearby. The teacher was old and strict, but she saw something special in Alina. She taught her for free because she believed in her talent. Alina practiced until her fingers hurt. She practiced until her mother had to drag her away for dinner. She practiced until she fell asleep on the piano bench. At age 10, Alina auditioned for the National School of Arts in Havana. This was the most famous music school in Cuba. Only the most talented children were accepted. The judges listened to her play, and their faces showed nothing. Alina was so nervous she thought she might be sick. While she played perfectly. Every note was right. Every feeling was true. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Alina had been accepted with a full scholarship. Her mother cried with joy. Her father lifted her up and spun her around. The neighbors came to celebrate. Everyone said Alina would be famous one day. Everyone said she would travel the world and play in great concert halls. Everyone said her future was bright. For 2 years Alina studied at the National School. She learned from the best teachers. She played in student concerts. She won competitions. At 12 years old, she performed for government officials and visiting diplomats. People called her a prodigy. They said she had magic in her fingers. They said she played with the soul of someone much older. Then everything fell apart. Alina's father got sick. Very sick. The doctors said it was his lungs, damaged from years of working in the factory. He could not work anymore. The family had no money. Alina's mother worked day and night, but it was not enough. Alina wanted to help, but she was just a child. All she could do was watch her father get weaker and weaker. The school told Alina she could continue her studies, but how could she think about piano when her father was dying? How could she practice when her mother was crying every night? Alina stopped going to lessons. She stopped practicing. The piano sat silent in their apartment. Her father died when Alina was 14. After that, nothing was the same. The country was going through hard times. There was not enough food. There was not enough medicine. There were rules about who could leave and who could stay. Alina's dreams of traveling the world and playing in concert halls seemed foolish now, silly, like a fairy tale for children. She grew up fast. She helped her mother. She took small jobs. She met a man named Carlos who was kind and made her laugh. They got married when she was 20. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl. Elena loved her family, but something inside her was broken. Something was missing. Years passed. Things in Cuba got harder. Carlos wanted a better life for their children. They made a dangerous decision. They would leave Cuba and go to America. It was risky. It was scary, but they did it. When Elena arrived in America, she had 2 suitcases and almost no money. She spoke very little English. She had no papers that proved she had once been a gifted pianist. All she had was a single photograph. In the photo, she was 12 years old, sitting at a beautiful piano, wearing a white dress. Her face was full of hope. Her whole future was ahead of her. That girl felt like a stranger now. Elena learned English slowly. She took whatever jobs she could find, cleaning, washing dishes, taking care of other people's children. Carlos worked too, in construction and factories. They saved every penny. They made sure their children went to school. They built a life. Small but honest. Then Elena got the job at Hartwell Conservatory. When she first walked through those doors, she felt something strange in her chest. The smell of wood polish, the sound of pianos coming from practice rooms, the sight of young students carrying music books. It all felt so familiar and so painful. Every day, Elena worked in a place that reminded her of everything she had lost. Every day, she'd cleaned around pianos she would never play. Every day, she watched students live the dream that had been stolen from her. But she never told anyone. She never complained. She just pushed her mop across the floor and stayed invisible. That was her life now. That was all she had. Or so she thought. Elena remembered the last time she played piano like it was yesterday. Some memories fade with time. This one never did. It stayed sharp and clear, like a piece of glass stuck in her heart. She was 13 years old. It was a warm evening in Havana, and the air smelled like salt from the ocean and smoke from cooking fires. Elena sat in the small apartment, her fingers moving across the old piano keys. She was practicing a piece by Chopin. It was difficult, full of fast notes and changing moods. But Elena played it beautifully. The music filled the tiny room and floated out the open window. Her father sat in his chair listening. He was already sick by then, but he still smiled when Elena played. Her mother stood in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. Even the noisy neighbors were quiet, letting the music wash over them. When Elena finished, her father clapped slowly. His hands were thin and weak, but his eyes were proud. "My little star," he said, "one day, you will play in the greatest halls in the world. You will make everyone proud." Elena smiled and went to hug him. She could feel his bones through his shirt. He was getting smaller every day, but in that moment, she believed him. She believed that everything would be okay. She believed that her talent would save them all. 2 weeks later, Elena received news that changed everything. She had been chosen to compete in an international piano competition in Europe. It was a huge honor. Only one student from Cuba was selected each year. The winner would get scholarship offers from famous schools around the world. This was Elena's chance. This was the moment she had been waiting for. But there was a problem. A big problem. Her father was too sick to be left alone. Her mother could not take care of him and work at the same time. Elena would need to travel for 3 weeks. 3 weeks away from her family during the worst time of their lives. "You must go," her father said. "This is your dream. This is why you have worked so hard." "I cannot leave you, Papa," Elena said, tears running down her face. "What if something happens?" Her father took her hand. His skin was cold and dry. "Listen to me," he said. "I am sick, yes, but I am not dead yet. I will wait for you. I promise. Go to Europe, win this competition, make our family name famous, then come home and tell me all about it." Elena did not want to go. Every part of her heart said to stay, but her mother agreed with her father. Her teachers said this opportunity would never come again. Everyone told her to go. So Elena made a decision. She would compete in Europe. She would win. She would come home with good news and make her father proud. The night before she was supposed to leave, Elena sat with her father one last time. He was lying in bed, too weak to sit up. The room was dark except for a small candle. "Promise me something," her father whispered. "Anything, Papa. Promise me you will never stop playing, no matter what happens. The piano is your gift. It is your voice. Never let anyone take it away from you." Elena held his hand tight. "I promise, Papa. I promise." She meant it with all her heart. She truly did. But life does not care about promises. The next morning, Elena woke up to screaming. It was her mother, crying out in a voice that did not sound human. Elena ran to her parents' room and saw her father lying still in the bed. His eyes were closed. His chest was not moving. He looked peaceful, like he was sleeping. But Elena knew. She knew before anyone said the words. Her father was gone. He had died in the night, just hours before Elena was supposed to leave for Europe. The competition was forgotten. The trip was cancelled. Elena's dreams were buried along with her father in a small cemetery on the edge of Havana. She stood at his grave in a black dress, feeling nothing, feeling everything, feeling like the world had ended. After the funeral, Elena tried to play piano again. She sat at the old instrument in their apartment and put her fingers on the keys, but no music came. Every note reminded her of her father. Every song brought back his voice, his smile, his promise that she would make everyone proud. She had failed him. She had not gone to Europe. She had not won the competition. She had not done anything except watch him die. Elena closed the piano lid and walked away. She did not play again that day, or the next day, or the next week. Days turned into months. Months turned into years. The piano sat in the corner, gathering dust, like a grave for her dreams. Life moved on, even though Elena did not want it to. She had to help her mother pay bills. She had to take care of her younger brother. There was no time for music lessons. There was no money for competitions. The National School of Arts sent letters asking why she had stopped coming. Eventually the letters stopped. Elena got older. She watched other young pianists from Cuba become famous. She heard their names on the radio and saw their pictures in newspapers. Each time, she felt a pain in her chest. That could have been her. That should have been her. But it was too late now. The moment had passed. The door had closed. When Elena was 18, she met Carlos at a neighborhood party. He was 22, tall and handsome, with kind eyes and a loud laugh. He did not know anything about classical music. He worked with his hands, fixing cars and machines. But he looked at Elena like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. They started talking. Then they started walking together in the evenings. Then they started falling in love. Carlos made Elena feel safe. He made her feel like maybe life could be good again, even without music. "Tell me about yourself," Carlos said one night as they sat on a bench near the ocean. Elena thought about her answer. She could tell him about the piano, about the competitions, about the dreams that died with her father. But what was the point? That girl was gone. That life was over. "There is not much to tell," Elena said. "I am just a simple girl from Havana." Carlos smiled and took her hand. "Simple girls do not have sad eyes like yours. But that is okay. You do not have to tell me everything. Not yet." They got married a year later. Elena wore a white dress that her mother made by hand. Carlos cried when he saw her walking toward him. The wedding was small and cheap, but it was full of love. Soon Elena was pregnant with their first child, a boy they named Miguel. 2 years later, a girl named Sofia Elena threw herself into being a mother. She cooked and cleaned and sang lullabies. She played games and told stories and wiped away tears. She loved her children more than she had ever loved anything. But sometimes, late at night, when the apartment was quiet and everyone was sleeping, Elena would think about the piano. She would remember how it felt to press the keys and make beautiful sounds. She would remember her father's voice saying, "Promise me you will never stop playing." She had broken that promise. She had stopped playing, and now, 30 years had passed. The old piano from her childhood was long gone, sold to buy food during hard times. Elena had not touched a piano since she was 14 years old. She did not even know if she still could play. Her fingers were different now. They were older, rougher, used to scrubbing and cleaning instead of making music. When Elena and Carlos decided to leave Cuba, they could only bring what they could carry. There was no room for a piano. There was no room for sheet music or competition photos or any reminder of who Elena used to be. Except for one thing. Elena kept a single photograph. It was small and worn at the edges. In the picture, she was 12 years old sitting at a grand piano in a beautiful hall. She wore a white dress with a blue ribbon in her hair. Her hands were on the keys. Her face was turned toward the camera and she was smiling. That girl had believed anything was possible. That girl had dreams as big as the sky. Elena looked at the photograph sometimes when she was alone. She would trace the outline of the piano with her finger. She would remember the feeling of music flowing through her body. She would remember her father's proud face in the audience. Then she would put the photograph away and go back to her real life. Her life of cleaning and cooking and surviving. Her life of being invisible. The past was the past. The girl in the photograph was gone, or so Elena believed. Until the night everything changed. It was a cold morning in October when the news spread through the Hartwell Conservatory like fire. The school was turning 100 years old. 100 years of training the best musicians in the country. 100 years of concerts and competitions and dreams coming true. To celebrate, there would be a grand gala. The biggest event in the school's history. Elena heard about it while she was cleaning the main hallway. 2 professors were walking past, talking loudly about the plans. 500 guests, one professor said. Donors, critics, famous musicians, everyone who is anyone will be there. And the performances will be spectacular, the other professor added. Only our very best students will play. This will show the world that Hartwell is still the greatest music school. Elena kept her head down and continued mopping. The gala had nothing to do with her. She would probably just have extra cleaning to do before and after. That was her role, to clean up after the important people had their fun. But as the weeks passed, Elena learned more about the event. It would take place in the grand recital hall. There would be fancy food and expensive wine. Women would wear beautiful dresses. Men would wear suits that cost more than Elena's yearly salary. A red carpet would be rolled out at the entrance. Photographers would take pictures for newspapers and magazines, and at the center of it all would be the Steinway grand piano. The conservatory brought in extra staff to help prepare, but the regular cleaning team was also given more work. Elena's supervisor, a tired woman named Martha, called everyone together for a meeting. The gala is in 6 weeks, Martha said. Everything must be perfect. Every floor, every window, every piece of furniture. The donors who come to this event give millions of dollars to the school. If they see one speck of dust, we will all be in trouble. The other cleaners groaned. More work for the same pay. That was how it always went. Martha looked at Elena. Vasquez, you will be in charge of the recital hall. You know that room better than anyone. I want the floors shining like mirrors. I want the seats spotless. And I want that piano looking like it just came from the factory. Elena nodded. Yes, ma'am. That night, Elena went to the recital hall to start her work. The room was empty and quiet. The red velvet seats stretched out in perfect rows. The painted angels on the ceiling looked down at her with gentle smiles. And there, on the stage, sat the Steinway piano. Elena had cleaned this room hundreds of times, maybe thousands. But tonight felt different somehow. Maybe it was the talk about the gala. Maybe it was the extra pressure to make everything perfect. Or maybe it was something she could not explain. A feeling in her chest. A whisper in her heart. She started with the seats, wiping each one carefully. Then she moved to the floor, sweeping away any dust or dirt. She cleaned the windows until they sparkled. She polished the wooden railings. She worked slowly and carefully, the way she always did. Finally, it was time to clean the piano. Elena climbed the steps to the stage. Her footsteps echoed in the empty room. The Steinway sat there like a sleeping animal, big and black and beautiful. She had polished this piano many times before, but tonight, standing alone on the stage, it felt different. It felt alive. She took out her soft cloth and began wiping the surface of the piano. The wood was smooth and cool under her fingers. She moved around the instrument, cleaning every inch. The legs, the music stand, the pedals. She worked with the care of someone handling something precious. Then she came to the keys. The keyboard cover was closed, as it usually was after hours. Elena knew she should just wipe the cover and move on. That was her job. Clean and polish, nothing more. But her hand stopped moving. She stood there, looking at the closed cover, and something strange happened inside her. Her heart started beating faster. Her breath became shallow. Her fingers began to shake. Open it. A voice whispered in her mind. Just open it and look. Elena shook her head. This was foolish. She was a cleaning lady, not a pianist. She had no right to touch those keys. If someone saw her, she could lose her job. But the voice would not stop. It had been quiet for 30 years, buried deep inside her. Now it was waking up. Now it was demanding to be heard. Open it. Remember who you are. Elena looked around the empty hall. There was no one here. No students, no professors, no one to judge her or laugh at her. Just her and the piano and the painted angels watching from above. Her hand moved almost by itself. Slowly, carefully, she lifted the keyboard cover. The keys appeared before her, white and black, perfect and waiting. They seemed to glow in the dim light. Elena stared at them for a long moment. She remembered sitting at her old piano in Havana. She remembered her father's voice saying she had magic in her fingers. She remembered the last piece she ever played, the Chopin piece. On the night before everything fell apart, her hand reached toward the keys, then stopped, then reached again. She pressed one key, just one. A single note rang out in the empty hall, pure and clear. The sound traveled up to the ceiling, bounced off the walls, and faded into silence. Elena felt tears in her eyes. That sound, that beautiful sound, it was like hearing the voice of an old friend. It was like coming home after being lost for years. She pressed another key, then another. A simple melody began to form under her fingers. It was a Cuban lullaby, the one her mother used to sing. Elena had not thought about that song in decades, but her fingers remembered. They knew exactly where to go. She played the whole lullaby, start to finish. Her hands moved slowly, carefully, like someone learning to walk again after an accident. Some notes were wrong, some rhythms were off, but it did not matter. She was playing. After 30 years of silence, Elena Vasquez was making music again. When the song ended, Elena stood frozen at the piano. Her whole body was shaking. Tears were running down her face. She did not know if she was happy or sad or scared or all of those things at once. What have I done? She thought. What have I started? She quickly closed the keyboard cover and stepped back from the piano. Her heart was racing. Her mind was spinning. She grabbed her cleaning supplies and hurried off the stage, afraid that someone might have heard her. But the hall was empty. No one was there. No one had witnessed her secret moment with the piano. Elena finished her work quickly and left the building. She walked home through the cold night air, her breath making little clouds. Her husband Carlos was already asleep. Her children were grown now, living in their own apartments. The house was quiet. Elena lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. She could not stop thinking about the piano, about the feel of the keys under her fingers, about the sound that had filled the empty hall. For 30 years, she had told herself that part of her life was over. She had told herself she was just a cleaning lady now. She had told herself that dreams were for young people, not for old women with gray hair and rough hands. But tonight something had changed. Something had woken up inside her, a small fire that she thought had died long ago. The gala was in 6 weeks. Elena would be cleaning the recital hall every night until then. Every night, she would be alone with the Steinway piano. The question was simple. Would she touch the keys again? The answer scared her, because deep down, Elena already knew, yes, she would touch them again. She would play again. She could not help herself. The music was calling her home. The next night, Elena told herself she would not do it. She would clean the recital hall like always. She would polish the piano and leave. She would not touch the keys. She would not give in to this foolish dream. But when she finished her other work and walked into the empty hall, her body had other plans. Her feet carried her straight to the stage. Her hands lifted the keyboard cover. Her fingers found the keys. This time, she played something harder, a simple piece by Mozart that she had learned as a child. Her fingers stumbled at first. They felt clumsy and slow. But as she kept playing, something strange happened. The music started to flow. The notes started to connect. It was like her hands had their own memory, separate from her brain. Elena played the piece 3 times. Each time was a little better than the last. By the 3rd time, she was smiling through her tears. I can still do this, she thought. After everything, I can still play. From that night on, Elena had a secret routine. She would finish her cleaning work as fast as possible. She would make sure no one else was in the building. Then she would go to the recital hall, sit at the Steinway piano, and play. At first, she only played simple pieces, children's songs, easy melodies, things she had learned before she turned 10. Her fingers needed time to remember. Her muscles needed time to get strong again, but Elena was patient. She had waited 30 years for this. She could take a few more weeks. Every night, she pushed herself a little harder. She tried faster pieces. She tried more difficult rhythms. She tried songs that required both hands to work together in complicated ways. Some nights, she failed more than she succeeded. Some nights her hands cramped and her back ached and she wanted to give up, but she never gave up. She kept coming back. She kept practicing. The janitor's closet became her dressing room. She would change out of her cleaning uniform and put on a simple black dress that she kept in her locker. It made her feel more like a musician and less like a maid. She would look at herself in the small mirror and whisper, "You can do this. Elena, you are still that girl." Then she would walk to the recital hall and play until her fingers could not move anymore. After 2 weeks, Elena tried something she had been afraid to try. She played one of her father's favorite pieces. It was a Chopin nocturne, slow and beautiful and full of sadness. Elena had performed it at her last competition in Cuba, the one she never got to finish. She placed her fingers on the keys. She took a deep breath. She began to play. The first few notes were shaky. Her hands were trembling, but she kept going. She let the music carry her away. She thought about her father sitting in his chair, listening with that proud smile on his face. She thought about all the years she had wasted, hiding from her gift. She thought about the promise she had made and broken. The music built and fell, like waves on the ocean. It whispered and cried and sang. Elena closed her eyes and let herself feel everything. All the pain, all the loss, all the hope that had never completely died. When the last note faded into silence, Elena was sobbing. Her whole body was shaking with tears. She had not cried like this in years. Maybe decades. All the emotions she had buried were finally coming out. "I am sorry, Papa," she whispered into the empty hall. "I am sorry I stopped playing. I am sorry I broke my promise." But even as she said the words, she felt something new, something that felt like forgiveness, like maybe it was not too late, like maybe her father would be proud of her for trying again. Even after all this time, Elena wiped her eyes and looked at the piano. In the darkness of the empty hall, it seemed to glow with its own light. "Thank you," she said softly. "Thank you for waiting for me." After that night, Elena's playing improved quickly. It was like a dam had broken inside her. The music that had been trapped for 30 years was finally free. It poured out of her fingers with more and more power each night. She moved on to harder pieces. Liszt, Beethoven, Rachmaninoff. These were pieces she had studied as a young girl but never mastered. Now, as a woman of 53, she found new meaning in every note. She understood things about the music that her younger self could never have understood. The joy, the pain, the beauty of being alive in a world that was often cruel. Elena started to feel different during the day. She stood a little straighter. She smiled a little more. Even the other cleaners noticed the change. "What is happening with you, Vasquez?" Martha asked one morning. "You look different. Younger somehow." Elena just shrugged. "I am sleeping better these days. That is all." But it was not all. It was so much more than that. Every night at the piano was like therapy for Elena's soul. She was healing wounds she had carried for 30 years. She was reconnecting with a part of herself she thought had died. She was becoming whole again. One night, about 4 weeks before the gala, Elena decided to try the hardest piece she knew, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. This was a piece that professional pianists spent months preparing. It was technical and emotional and incredibly demanding. Elena had only ever heard it performed. She had never played it herself, but she had found the sheet music in the conservatory's library. She had been studying it during her breaks, memorizing the notes, hearing the music in her head. Tonight, she would try to bring it to life. She sat at the piano and placed the sheet music on the stand. Her hands were sweating. Her heart was pounding. This was crazy. This was impossible. A cleaning lady trying to play one of the most difficult piano pieces ever written. But Alina took a deep breath and began. The opening notes were dark and powerful, like bells ringing in a storm. Alina's fingers moved across the keys with growing confidence. She made mistakes, many mistakes, but she kept going. She let the music carry her forward. The piece built and built, climbing toward something magnificent. Alina played with everything she had, all her pain, all her hope, all her love. She played for her father. She played for her mother. She played for the little girl who had once believed she could change the world with her music. When she reached the end of the first movement, Alina was breathing hard. Her fingers ached. Her arms were tired. But she was smiling. A real smile. A smile of pure joy. "I did it," she whispered. "I actually did it." She did not notice the door at the back of the hall opening. She did not see the figure standing in the shadows, watching and listening. She did not know that her secret was about to be discovered. Alina sat at the piano, alone in the dim light, and felt happier than she had felt in 30 years. For this moment at least, she was not a cleaning lady. She was not invisible. She was a musician. She was herself. The painted angels on the ceiling seemed to smile down at her. The empty seats seemed to lean forward, eager to hear more. The Steinway piano hummed with satisfaction, happy to finally be played by someone who truly loved it. Alina closed the keyboard cover and stood up. She had cleaning to finish. Reality was waiting. But for the first time in a very long time, reality did not feel like a prison. It felt like a doorway to something she could not yet imagine. What Alina did not know was that everything was about to change. Her secret was no longer a secret, and the gala that she thought had nothing to do with her. It was about to become the most important night of her life. Professor Richard Caldwell was having a bad day. Actually, he was having a bad month. The gala was approaching fast, and nothing was going right. 2 of his best students had caught a cold and could barely practice. The program schedule kept changing. Donors were making demands. Critics were asking for interviews. And somewhere in all this chaos, he had lost his briefcase. Richard Caldwell was 61 years old and had been the head of the piano department at Hartwell Conservatory for 15 years. He had trained some of the most successful pianists in the country. He had performed in concert halls across the world. He had won awards and earned honors and been called one of the great musical minds of his generation. But right now, at 11 o'clock at night, he was just a tired old man looking for his briefcase. He had left it somewhere in the building. He was sure of that. Probably in his office, or maybe in the faculty lounge, or possibly in one of the practice rooms, where he had been coaching students all day. Richard walked through the dark hallways of the conservatory. Most of the lights were off. Everyone had gone home hours ago. His footsteps echoed on the marble floors. He checked his office first. No briefcase. He checked the faculty lounge. Nothing. He was about to check the practice rooms when he heard something that made him stop. Music. Piano music. Coming from the direction of the recital hall. Richard frowned. No one was supposed to be in the building this late. The practice rooms were locked after 10. Students were not allowed to use the recital hall without permission. Who would be playing at this hour? He walked quietly toward the sound. As he got closer, the music became clearer. It was Rock, the second piano concerto, one of the most difficult pieces in the classical catalogue. And whoever was playing it was extraordinary. Richard reached the doors of the recital hall. They were slightly open, just a crack. He peered through the gap and saw something that made his heart stop. The cleaning lady, the woman who mopped the floors, the woman he had walked past 1,000 times without ever really seeing. She was sitting at the Steinway piano, playing Rachmaninoff with the skill and emotion of a world-class virtuoso. Richard could not move. He could not breathe. He just stood there watching and listening, his mind struggling to understand what he was seeing. The woman's fingers flew across the keys with incredible speed and precision. But it was not just technical skill. There was something else, something deeper. She played with a kind of emotional truth that Richard rarely heard, even from his most talented students. Every note seemed to come from her soul. The music built toward the climax of the second movement. It was a passage that required tremendous power and delicacy at the same time. Many professional pianists struggled with it. This woman, this cleaning lady in a simple black dress, played it perfectly, more than perfectly. She played it like her life depended on it. Richard felt tears forming in his eyes. In 40 years of working with musicians, he had heard thousands of performances. Some were good, some were great, a few were truly special. But this was something different. This was music in its purest form. When the movement ended, the woman sat still for a moment, her hands resting on the keys. Then she let out a long breath and whispered something Richard could not hear. She looked peaceful, happy, like someone who had finally found something they had lost long ago. Richard wanted to stay. He wanted to hear more. But he was afraid of being seen. He was afraid of breaking whatever spell had been cast in this empty hall. So he stepped back from the door and walked away as quietly as he could. His briefcase was forgotten. Everything was forgotten except what he had just witnessed. That night, Richard did not sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the cleaning woman. Who was she? Where had she learned to play like that? Why was she pushing a mop instead of performing on stages around the world? The next morning, Richard went to the administration office and asked to see the personnel files for the cleaning staff. The woman behind the desk gave him a strange look but handed over the folder. Richard found the file he was looking for. Elena Vasquez, age 53, employee for 11 years, born in Havana, Cuba. No other information, no musical background listed, no education history, just a name, an age, and a photograph of a tired-looking woman in a blue uniform. But Richard knew there had to be more. People did not learn to play Rachmaninoff like that by accident. Somewhere in this woman's past, there was a story, and Richard was determined to find it. He spent the next several days doing research. He searched online for any mention of Elena Vasquez and piano. He found nothing at first. Then he tried different spellings, different variations of the name. Finally, he found something. An old article from a Cuban arts journal, DATED, 1985. The article was about a student piano competition in Havana, and there, in a grainy black and white photograph, was a young girl. She was maybe 12 or 13 years old, sitting at a piano wearing a white dress with a ribbon in her hair. The caption read, Elena Vasquez, winner of the junior division, performs Chopin. Richard stared at the photograph for a long time. The face was younger, but there was no doubt it was the same woman. The cleaning lady who mopped his floors had once been a prize-winning pianist in Cuba. He searched for more information but found only fragments. A mention in a competition program, a listing in a school roster, then nothing. After 1985, Elena Vasquez seemed to have disappeared from the music world completely. What had happened? Why had she stopped playing? And how had she ended up cleaning floors in America, hiding her incredible talent from everyone? Richard knew he had to talk to her. He had to understand, but he did not know how to approach her. What would he say? I was spying on you last night and heard you play. She would probably be embarrassed, or angry, or scared. For several days, Richard said nothing. He went about his work, preparing for the gala, coaching students, attending meetings, but every time he saw Elena in the hallway, his heart would beat faster. Every time he watched her push her mop across the floor, he wanted to run up to her and tell her how amazing she was. Finally, he could not wait any longer. The gala was only 3 weeks away. If Elena had any chance of performing, they needed to start preparing now. Richard found her one afternoon in his office. She was emptying his trash can, moving quickly and quietly, trying to be invisible like always. Mrs. Vasquez, Richard said softly. Elena looked up, surprised. Professors rarely spoke to her. They usually pretended she did not exist. Yes, sir, she said. Her accent was noticeable, but her English was clear. Richard closed the door to his office. Elena's face showed a flash of fear. Was she in trouble? Had she done something wrong? Please, do not be afraid, Richard said. I just want to talk with you. Elena stood very still, holding the trash bag in her hands. Richard took a deep breath. There was no easy way to say this. I heard you play, he said. A few nights ago, I came back to the building to find my briefcase and I heard music from the recital hall. I saw you at the piano. I saw you playing Rachmaninoff. Elena's face went white. The trash bag fell from her hands. I am sorry, she said quickly. I should not have touched the piano. I know it was wrong. Please do not fire me. I need this job. My family depends on me. I will never do it again. I promise. She was shaking. Tears were forming in her eyes. She looked like a criminal who had been caught committing a terrible crime. Richard held up his hands. No, you do not understand. I am not here to fire you. I am here to tell you that what I heard was the most beautiful piano playing I've experienced in 20 years. Elena stared at him. She did not seem to understand. You are extraordinary, Richard continued. Your technique, your emotion, your understanding of the music. I have taught at this school for 15 years. I have trained students who perform at Carnegie Hall, and I am telling you, honestly, that you play better than almost all of them. Elena shook her head slowly. That is not possible. I have not played in 30 years. I am just a cleaning lady. That may be what you do, Richard said, but it is not who you are. I found an old article about you. You won a piano competition in Cuba when you were a child. You studied at the National School of Arts. You were a prodigy. Elena said nothing. Her face showed a mixture of emotions, shame, fear, and something else. Something that looked almost like hope. What happened? Richard asked gently. Why did you stop playing? For a long moment, Elena did not answer. Then, slowly, she began to speak. She told him about her father, about his illness and death, about the competition she never attended, about the promise she made and broke, about the years of silence, about coming to America with nothing, about finding work as a cleaner, about the night she first touched the Steinway piano and felt something inside her wake up again when she finished. Both of them had tears in their eyes. Richard sat down heavily in his chair. What a waste, he said softly. What a terrible waste of a beautiful gift. It is over now, Elena said. I am too old. My time has passed. No, Richard said firmly. It has not passed. I have a proposal for you, Mrs. Vasquez. Something that might sound crazy, but I want you to hear me out before you say no. Elena looked at him with suspicious eyes. What kind of proposal? Richard leaned forward. Elena said no. She said it clearly and firmly. She said it the next day when Professor Caldwell found her in the hallway. She said it the day after that when he left a note in her locker. She said it every time he brought up the subject for the next 2 weeks. "I am sorry, Professor," she would say, "but I cannot do what you are asking. It is impossible." But Richard Caldwell was not a man who gave up easily. He had spent his whole life working with musicians. He knew that talent was rare and precious. He knew that letting Elena's gift stay hidden would be a crime against music itself. So he kept trying. He started leaving things for her. A recording of a famous pianist playing Chopin. A book about musicians who had found success later in life. A newspaper article about a woman who learned to paint at age 70 and became famous. Each gift came with a small note. "It is never too late," he would write, "or your talent deserves to be heard. Or simply please think about it." Elena would find these gifts in her locker or on her cleaning cart. At first, she threw them away. Then she started keeping them. She would take them home and look at them late at night when Carlos was sleeping. She would read the articles and listen to the recordings and feel something stirring inside. Her hope, fear, longing all mixed together in a confusing storm, but she still said no. Every time the professor asked, she refused. "You do not understand," she told him one evening. "I am not the girl I used to be. That girl died a long time ago. I am just an old woman now. An old woman who cleans floors. If I walk onto that stage, people will laugh at me." "They will not laugh," Richard said. "They will be amazed." Elena shook her head. "You heard me play in an empty room. That is different. I cannot play in front of people. I have not performed in front of an audience since I was 14 years old. I would freeze. I would fail. I would embarrass myself and you and everyone." "What if you did not fail?" Richard asked quietly. "What if you walked onto that stage and played the way I heard you play that night? What then?" Elena did not answer. She could not imagine it. The idea was too big, too scary, too impossible. The days passed. The gala grew closer. Elena continued her secret rehearsals at night, but something had changed. Now that someone knew her secret, the magic felt different. She felt watched, even when she was alone. She felt judged, even when no one was there. One night, about 10 days before the gala, Elena came home to find her daughter Sophia sitting at the kitchen table. Sophia was 28 years old now, married with a young child of her own. She lived across town and usually called before visiting. "Mia," Elena said, surprised. "What are you doing here so late?" Sophia looked at her mother with serious eyes. "I talked to someone today. A professor from the conservatory where you work, Professor Caldwell." Elena felt her heart drop. "He called you. He found my number somehow. I do not know how. He told me everything, Mama, about your playing, about the gala, about how you keep saying no." Elena sat down heavily in a chair. She felt tired, so tired. "He should not have called you. This is not your business. Not my business." Sophia's voice rose. "Mama, I have known you my whole life. I never knew you could play piano. I never knew you were some kind of musical genius when you were young. Why did you never tell me?" Elena looked at her hands. They were rough and cracked from years of cleaning. "Because that part of my life is over. I did not want to burden you with old dreams." Sophia reached across the table and took her mother's hands. "Old dreams are still dreams, Mama. And this professor says you are incredible. He says you play better than almost anyone he has ever heard. Why would you hide that?" Elena felt tears forming. She had spent so many years being strong, being practical, putting everyone else first. Now all that strength felt like a wall she had built around herself, a wall that was starting to crack. "I am scared," Elena whispered. "I am so scared, Mia. What if I fail? What if I get on that stage and forget everything? What if people laugh at the old cleaning lady who thinks she can play piano?" Sophia squeezed her hands. "And what if they do not laugh? What if they cry? What if they stand up and cheer? What if you show the world who you really are?" Elena shook her head. "I do not know who I really am anymore." "I do," Sophia said. "You are the woman who worked 3 jobs to send me to college. You are the woman who never complained even when life was hard. You are the woman who taught me that anything is possible if you work hard enough. And now I am telling you the same thing. Anything is possible, Mama." Even this. They sat in silence for a long moment. Elena could hear the clock ticking on the wall. She could hear her own heart beating in her chest. "Abuelo would want you to do this," Sophia said softly. "Your father, he would want you to keep your promise." Elena closed her eyes. She saw her father's face. She heard his voice saying, "Promise me you will never stop playing." She felt the weight of all the years she had broken that promise. "One piece," Elena said finally. "Just one piece. That is all." Sophia's face broke into a huge smile. "Really, you will do it?" Elena nodded slowly. "I must be crazy, but yes, I will try." Sophia jumped up and hugged her mother tight. "I am so proud of you, Mama, so proud." Elena hugged her back, feeling like she was stepping off a cliff into darkness. She had no idea if there was ground below or just empty air, but she was going to jump anyway. The next morning, Elena found Professor Caldwell before she started her shift. He was in his office, looking tired and worried. When he saw her, his face showed surprise. "Mrs. Vasquez, is everything okay?" "I will do it," Elena said. Her voice was shaking but clear. "I will perform at the gala. One piece. That is all I can promise." Richard stared at her for a moment. Then his face broke into the biggest smile Alina had ever seen. He jumped up from his chair and grabbed both her hands. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. You will not regret this. I promise you." Alina wished she could believe him, but a voice in her head kept saying she was making a terrible mistake, the biggest mistake of her life. Still, the decision was made. In 10 days, Elena Vasquez would walk onto the stage of the Hartwell Conservatory recital hall. She would sit at the Steinway grand piano, and she would play for an audience for the first time in 39 years. The thought made her want to throw up, but it also made her feel something else, something she had not felt in a very long time. Alive, she felt completely, terrifyingly alive. Now she just had to survive the next 10 days without changing her mind. The days that followed were the hardest of Elena's life. Harder than leaving Cuba, harder than those first years in America when she barely spoke English, harder than anything she could remember. Professor Caldwell wanted her to practice properly, not just at night in the empty hall, but during the day in real practice rooms. He arranged for her to have time in room 1-B, a small practice room with a good piano on the 3rd floor. Her cleaning supervisor Martha was told that Alina needed time off for personal reasons. Martha did not ask questions, so every afternoon, Alina would take off her cleaning uniform and put on regular clothes. She would walk up to the 3rd floor and lock herself in room 1-B, and she would practice. The first few sessions were terrible. Alina could not focus. Every sound in the hallway made her jump. Every footstep outside the door made her hands freeze on the keys. She was so afraid of being heard, so afraid of being judged. "You must relax," Professor Caldwell told her during one of their meetings. "The fear is blocking your talent. You need to trust yourself." "How can I trust myself?" Alina asked. "I have not performed in front of people for almost 40 years. My last real performance was when I was 14. I am not that girl anymore." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "You are right. You are not that girl. You are something better. You are a woman who has lived, who has loved, who has lost, who has survived. That experience is in your music. I heard it that night. The depth of emotion you bring to the piano comes from everything you have been through." Alina thought about his words. She had never considered that her hard life might have given her something valuable. She had always seen her past as a tragedy, a story of broken dreams and missed chances. But maybe there was another way to look at it. Over the next few days, Alina tried to practice differently. Instead of fighting her fear, she tried to accept it. Instead of pretending to be the young prodigy she used to be, she tried to be the woman she had become. Slowly, her playing started to change. She chose her piece carefully. It would be Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor. This was a piece she had studied as a child but never performed publicly. It was technically demanding but also deeply emotional. It told a story of struggle and triumph, of darkness and light. It felt like the perfect choice. Professor Caldwell agreed. "The ballade is perfect for you," he said. "It requires maturity and depth, things that a young prodigy might not have, but you certainly do." Alina practiced the piece for hours every day. She worked on the difficult passages until her fingers ached. She practiced the soft parts until they sounded like whispers. She practiced the loud parts until they roared like thunder. Slowly, the piece became part of her. It was not just notes on a page anymore. It was a story she was telling, her story. 5 days before the gala, Professor Caldwell arranged for Alina to do a test performance, just a small audience. Him, 2 other professors he trusted, and Elena's daughter Sophia. They gathered in a small recital room, not the big hall where the gala would be held. Alina was terrified. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold them still. When she sat at the piano, she felt like everyone was staring at her, judging her, waiting for her to fail. She placed her fingers on the keys. She took a deep breath, and she began to play. The first few measures were shaky. Her timing was off. Her fingers stumbled on notes she had played perfectly 100 times before. The fear was winning. She was going to fail. Then something happened. A memory came to her. She was 12 years old, sitting at her old piano in Havana. Her father was in his chair, listening. He looked at her with such love, such pride, and he said, "Play for me, my little star. Play like no one else is watching." Alina closed her eyes. She blocked out the small audience. She blocked out the fear. She imagined she was playing just for her father, just for him. That the music changed. The stumbling stopped. Her fingers found their confidence. The ballade flowed out of her like water from a fountain. It rose and fell. It whispered and shouted. It told the story of her life. All the pain, all the love, all the hope that had never completely died. When the last note faded, Alina sat frozen at the piano. She was afraid to open her eyes, afraid to see the faces of her audience, afraid to know if she had failed or succeeded. Then she heard something clapping, loud clapping. She opened her eyes and saw Professor Caldwell standing up, applauding with tears running down his face. The other 2 professors were also standing, looking stunned, and Sophia was sobbing into her hands. "That was magnificent," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "Absolutely magnificent. Alina, you have nothing to worry about. Nothing at all." Sophia ran to her mother and hugged her tight. "Mama, That was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard. I did not know you had this inside you. Alina felt tears on her own cheeks. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of joy, of something that felt almost like freedom. I think I can do this, she whispered. I think I might actually be able to do this. The next few days passed quickly. Alina continued to practice, but now there was less fear and more excitement. She was still nervous, but it was a different kind of nervous. Not the kind that makes you feel alive. Professor Caldwell helped her prepare for the practical details. What she would wear, how she would walk onto the stage, where she would sit, what she would do with her hands before she started playing. Everything was planned and practiced. You will be announced as a special surprise performer, Richard explained. No one will know who you are until you walk onto that stage. That way there is no expectation, no pressure. They will see you with fresh eyes. Alina nodded. Part of her wished she could tell people who she was, who she used to be. But another part of her liked the idea of being a mystery. Let them wonder who this woman was. Let them be surprised. The night before the gala, Alina could not sleep. She lay in bed next to Carlos, staring at the ceiling. Her husband had been supportive but worried. He did not want her to be hurt. He did not want her to be embarrassed. Are you sure about this? He asked in the darkness. No, Alina admitted. I am not sure about anything, but I have to try. I have been hiding for 30 years. Carlos, I cannot hide anymore. Carlos reached for her hand and held it tight. Then I will be there, in the front row, cheering for you. Alina smiled in the darkness. You do not even like classical music. I do not like classical music, Carlos agreed. But I love you, and I want to see you shine. They lay together in silence, holding hands. Outside, the night was quiet. Inside Alina's mind, the Chopin ballade played over and over, note by note. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, she would stop being invisible. Tomorrow, the world would see who Alina Vasquez really was. She just hoped she was brave enough to show them. The night of the gala arrived with cold winds and clear skies. Stars sparkled above the Hartwell Conservatory like tiny diamonds. A red carpet stretched from the street to the front doors. Photographers waited with cameras ready. Television crews set up their equipment. This was the biggest night in the school's 100-year history. Alina arrived early, before any of the guests. She came through the back entrance, the same door she used every night for her cleaning shifts. But tonight, everything felt different. The familiar hallways seemed strange and new. The air seemed to hum with electricity. Professor Caldwell met her backstage. He looked handsome in his black suit with a red tie. He was nervous too, Alina could tell. His hands kept moving, adjusting his tie, running through his hair. How are you feeling? He asked, terrified. Alina admitted, my stomach feels like it is full of butterflies. Big butterflies, fighting each other. Richard laughed. That is normal. Every performer feels that way, even the greatest ones. He led her to a small dressing room that had been prepared for her. On a hanger was a simple black dress. It was elegant but not fancy, expensive looking but not showy. Sophia had helped pick it out from a store downtown. You have 1 hour before your performance, Richard said. The student performances will happen first. Then there will be a short speech from the school president. Then you, Alina nodded. 1 hour 60 minutes, 3,600 seconds. Each one felt like a year. She changed into the black dress and looked at herself in the mirror. She barely recognized the woman looking back at her. This woman did not look like a cleaning lady. She looked like someone who belonged in a concert hall. Someone important. Someone special. You can do this, Alina told her reflection. You have to do this. Through the walls, she could hear the sounds of the gala beginning. Music playing, people talking, laughter and clapping. The auditorium was filling up with guests, donors in expensive suits, critics with no famous musicians who had once studied at Hartwell, society people who wanted to be seen at important events. Alina peeked through a crack in the backstage curtain. The recital hall looked amazing. Crystal chandeliers sparkled. Candles glowed on every table. The red velvet seats were filling up with people dressed in their finest clothes. Women wore long gowns and diamond jewelry. Men wore tuxedos with silk ties. In the front row, Alina spotted Carlos. He looked uncomfortable in the suit she had made him buy. He kept pulling at his collar like it was choking him. But he was there. He was really there, just like he promised. Next to Carlos sat Sophia and her husband, and next to them was Elena's son Miguel, who had flown in from Chicago just for this night. Alina had not expected him to come. When she saw him, she felt tears forming in her eyes. The student performances began. Young pianists and violinists took the stage one by one. They were talented, technically perfect. They played difficult pieces with skill and precision. The audience clapped politely after each performance. Alina listened from backstage, feeling more nervous with each passing minute. These students were so good, so polished. They had spent years preparing for this night. And here she was, a 53-year-old cleaning lady who had only been practicing for 6 weeks. What was she thinking? She started to pace back and forth in the small dressing room. Her hands were sweating. Her heart was racing. Maybe she should leave. Maybe she should tell Professor Caldwell she could not do it. Maybe she should run away before it was too late. Then she saw the photograph. Sophia had placed it on the dressing table. The old photograph from Cuba. Alina at 12 years old, sitting at a grand piano, wearing a white dress with a ribbon in her hair. Young Alina was smiling at the camera with such hope, such confidence, such certainty that her dreams would come true. Alina picked up the photograph and held it close to her chest. "Help me," she whispered. "Help me be brave like you used to be." The door opened. Professor Caldwell stood there, his face serious. "It is time," he said. Alina put down the photograph. She smoothed her dress. She took a deep breath. Then she followed Richard through the dark backstage area toward the wings of the stage. The school president was finishing his speech. He was an older man with white hair and a kind face. He was talking about the history of Hartwell, about the famous musicians who had studied there, about the bright future ahead. "And now," he said, "we have a very special surprise for you tonight, a mystery performance. I am told by Professor Caldwell that what you are about to hear will be unlike anything you have experienced before. Please welcome our surprise guest." The audience murmured with curiosity. Who could this mystery performer be? A famous pianist, a celebrity, someone important. The stage lights dimmed. A single spotlight illuminated the Steinway grand piano, the same piano Alina had cleaned hundreds of times, the same piano that had heard her secret midnight rehearsals. It sat there waiting for her, black and shining, like an old friend. "Go," Professor Caldwell whispered, giving her a gentle push. Alina walked onto the stage. The audience fell silent. Then the whispers began. People were looking at each other with confused faces. This was not a famous pianist. This was not a celebrity. Who was this woman? In the middle of the audience, a man in an expensive suit leaned over to his wife. "Is that the cleaning woman?" he whispered, loud enough for others to hear. "The one who mops the floors?" His wife squinted at the stage. "I think it is. What is going on? Is this some kind of joke?" The whispers spread through the audience like ripples in a pond. People started to laugh nervously. Some shook their heads in disbelief. A few donors looked angry, like they felt tricked. Alina heard everything. She saw the confused faces. She saw the skeptical looks. She saw people whispering behind their hands. For a terrible moment, she wanted to run. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to go back to being invisible. But then she saw Carlos in the front row. He was leaning forward, his hands pressed together like he was praying. His eyes were fixed on her with such love, such faith. Beside him, Sophia was crying already. Even though Alina had not played a single note, Alina walked to the piano and sat down on the bench. The audience grew quiet, waiting to see what would happen. Some people looked curious. Some looked doubtful. Some looked like they were ready to laugh. Alina placed her fingers on the keys. She closed her eyes. She thought about her father. She thought about the promise she had made. She thought about all the years of silence, all the nights of secret practicing, all the fear and hope that had brought her to this moment. Then she began to play the first notes of Chopin's Ballade No. One floated into the air, soft, hesitant, almost like a question. Is anyone there? Does anyone care? The audience listened. The skeptical faces did not change. Not yet. Alina kept playing. The music built slowly, carefully. The melody grew stronger. The harmonies became richer. The rhythm started to pulse with life. Something was happening. Something was changing. The faces in the audience were shifting. The doubt was fading. The curiosity was turning into something else. Alina did not see it. Her eyes were closed. She was not in the recital hall anymore. She was in Havana with her father. She was 12 years old again, playing for the man who believed in her more than anyone in the world. She was keeping her promise at last. The music rose and fell. It cried and laughed and whispered secrets. It told the story of a little girl with big dreams. A girl who lost everything and kept going anyway. A girl who became a woman who cleaned floors and raised children and never stopped believing that somewhere inside her the music was still alive. The audience sat frozen. No one moved. No one whispered. No one breathed. Something extraordinary was happening on that stage. Something that would change everything. The music filled every corner of the recital hall. It rose up to the painted angels on the ceiling. It wrapped around the crystal chandelier. It seeped into the hearts of every person in the audience. No one could escape it. No one wanted to. Alina played with her eyes closed, lost in the music. Her fingers moved across the keys with a power and grace that seemed impossible. This was not the playing of someone who had taken a 30-year break. This was the playing of a master, someone who had been born to make music, someone whose soul spoke through the piano. The Chopin Ballade is a journey. It starts quietly, almost shyly, like someone telling a secret. Then it grows. It builds. It takes you through storms and sunshine, through heartbreak and hope. And if played well, it can make you feel things you did not know you could feel. Alina played it better than well. She played it perfectly. In the audience, something remarkable was happening. The man who had called her the cleaning woman was sitting with his mouth open. His wife had tears running down her cheeks. All around the hall, people were being transformed by what they were hearing. A famous music critic named Harold Bennett sat in the third row. He had reviewed thousands of concerts in his 40-year career. He had heard every great pianist of the modern age. He thought he knew everything there was to know about piano music, but as he listened to Alina play, he realized he was wrong. He had never heard anything like this. He would never hear anything like it again. His pen dropped from his hand. He forgot to take notes. He just sat there, frozen, as the music washed over him. In the front row, Carlos was crying. Big, silent tears rolled down his weathered face. He had never understood classical music. He had never seen the point of it. But now, listening to his wife play, he understood everything. He understood why she had been so sad all those years. He understood what she had lost, and he understood what she had finally found. Again, Sofia held her father Miguel's hand so tight her knuckles were white. She watched her mother transform on that stage. The tired woman who scrubbed floors was gone. In her place was someone magnificent, someone powerful, someone who seemed to glow with an inner light. The music reached its darkest passage. Heavy chords crashed like thunder. The melody became wild and desperate, like someone fighting against fate. Elena's fingers pounded the keys with fierce intensity. Her whole body moved with the music. She was not just playing the piano anymore. She was the piano. She was the music itself. Then came the change. The storm began to break. Light started to peek through the clouds. The melody transformed from despair to hope, from darkness to dawn, from death to life. Elena's face changed as she played this section. The tension left her body. Her expression softened. She looked peaceful, beautiful, free. The music climbed higher and higher, building toward its final climax. Every note was perfect. Every phrase was shaped with care. The audience leaned forward in their seats, barely breathing, not wanting to miss a single moment. Then came the end. The last passage of the ballad is triumphant and tragic at the same time. It celebrates life while acknowledging death. It says yes to joy while remembering sorrow. It is one of the most emotionally powerful endings in all of piano music. Alina played it with everything she had. Her fingers flew across the keys in a cascade of notes. The sound filled the hall, enormous and overwhelming. Tears streamed down her face, but she did not stop. She could not stop. The music had taken over. It was pouring out of her like a river that had been blocked for 30 years. The final chords rang out, big, powerful, full of meaning. Alina held them as long as she could, letting the sound vibrate through the room. Then, slowly, they faded into silence. Complete silence. Alina sat frozen at the piano. Her hands were still on the keys. Her eyes were still closed. She did not know if she had succeeded or failed. She did not know if the audience was angry or amazed. She was afraid to look. The silence stretched on. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. It felt like hours. Then it came. A single person started to clap, then another, then another. Within moments, the entire audience was on its feet. 500 people, standing and clapping and cheering. The sound was like thunder. It shook the walls. It rattled the chandeliers. Alina opened her eyes. She could not believe what she was seeing. Everyone was standing. Everyone was clapping. Some people were crying. Some people were shouting bravo. Over and over. The famous critic Harold Bennett had tears running down his face. The man who had called her a cleaning woman was applauding harder than anyone. Alina stood up from the piano bench. Her legs were shaking. She felt like she might fall down, but she managed to bow. A small bow, a humble bow, the bow of someone who could not quite believe what was happening. The applause went on, and on and on. It did not stop. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. People kept clapping until their hands hurt. They kept cheering until their voices were hoarse. Professor Caldwell rushed onto the stage with tears in his eyes. He grabbed Elena's hand and raised it high in the air, like she was a champion boxer who had just won the biggest fight of her life. Elena Vasquez, he shouted to the crowd. Remember that name. The applause somehow got even louder. People started stomping their feet. The whole building seemed to shake with the sound of 500 people celebrating what they had just witnessed in the front row. Carlos had given up trying to hide his tears. He was sobbing openly, his face in his hands. Beside him, Sofia and Miguel were hugging each other, crying and laughing at the same time. Alina looked out at the audience. She saw the donors who had doubted her. She saw the critics who had been ready to laugh. She saw the professors and students who had walked past her for 11 years without ever really seeing her. Now they all saw her. Now they all knew who she really was. But more important than any of them, she saw Carlos, her husband of 30 years, the man who had loved her without ever knowing about this part of her life. He was looking at her with such wonder, such pride, such pure, overwhelming love. Elena brought her hand to her lips and blew him a kiss. The audience roared with approval. The applause continued for 4 minutes. 4 minutes of pure celebration. 4 minutes that changed everything. When it finally died down, Alina took one last bow. Then, on shaking legs, she walked off the stage. Backstage, she collapsed into Professor Caldwell's arms. She was laughing and crying at the same time. She did not know which emotion was winning. "You did it," Richard said, holding her tight. "You magnificent woman, you did it." Alina could not speak. Words were impossible. Everything was impossible. She had just done the most terrifying thing in her life, and she had not failed. She had soared. But within minutes, people started coming backstage. Donors wanted to meet her. Critics wanted to interview her. Professors wanted to shake her hand. Students wanted to ask her questions. Everyone wanted a piece of the woman who had just given the most memorable performance in the history of the Hartwell Conservatory. But Alina only wanted one person. She pushed through the crowd until she found Carlos. He was standing in the corner, looking lost and overwhelmed in his too tight suit. When he saw her coming, his face crumpled. "My love," he said. "My beautiful love. I never knew. All these years, I never knew." Elena fell into his arms. "I know," she whispered. "I did not know either. I forgot who I was. But now I remember. Now I finally remember." They held each other for a long time while the chaos of celebration swirled around them. Two people who had built a life together. Two people who had just discovered that life was even bigger and more beautiful than they had realized. The night of the gala was over, but Elena's new life was just beginning. Alina woke up the next morning to her phone ringing. It had been ringing all night. She had turned it off at midnight, too exhausted to answer any more calls. Now, in the gray light of dawn, it was ringing again. "What is happening?" Carlos mumbled from his pillow. Alina grabbed the phone. The screen showed 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from numbers she did not recognize before she could figure out what was going on. There was a knock at the front door. Then another. Then the doorbell started ringing over and over. Carlos got up and looked through the window. His face went pale. "Alina," he said slowly, "there are people outside with cameras." Alina came to the window and looked. There were at least 10 people standing on their small front lawn. Some had big cameras on their shoulders. Some were holding microphones. A news van was parked on the street with a satellite dish on top. "What is going on?" Alina whispered. Then her phone rang again. This time it was Sofia. "Mama, have you seen the internet?" Sofia's voice was excited and scared at the same time. "You are everywhere. Everyone is talking about you." Alina did not understand. She barely knew how to use the internet. She had a Facebook account that Sofia had made for her, but she almost never looked at it. "Someone recorded your performance last night," Sofia explained. "They put it on the internet. It has been viewed 5 million times already." 5 million, Mama, and it is still growing." Alina sat down on the bed. Her legs could not hold her. During the night, while Alina slept, the world had discovered her. Someone in the audience had recorded her entire performance on their phone. They had posted it online with the title, "Cleaning Lady Stuns Audience at Music School Gala." Within hours, the video had gone viral. It had been shared on every social media platform. News stations around the world had picked up the story. By morning, Alina Vasquez was famous. The next few days were a blur. Alina could not leave her house without being surrounded by reporters. Her phone rang constantly with requests for interviews. News stations from America, Europe, Asia, and South America all wanted to talk to her. Everyone wanted to know her story. Professor Caldwell helped her navigate the chaos. He arranged interviews and managed calls. He made sure Alina was not overwhelmed by the sudden attention. He became her protector in a world that had suddenly become very loud and very bright. The headlines were amazing. "The Janitor Virtuoso, from Mop to Masterpiece. Cleaning Lady Reveals Secret Past as Musical Genius." Every story told the tale of Elena's incredible journey. The poverty in Cuba, the death of her father, the 30 years of silence, the secret midnight rehearsals, the triumph at the gala. People around the world fell in love with her story. It was a fairy tale come true. A reminder that talent can survive anything, that dreams do not die. They just wait for the right moment to wake up. The offers started pouring in. Recording companies wanted to sign her. Concert halls wanted her to perform. Television shows wanted her to be a guest. Book publishers wanted her to write her life story. The numbers they talked about were beyond anything Alina could imagine. Millions of dollars, world tours, fame and fortune beyond her wildest dreams. Alina said no to almost everything. She did a few interviews because Professor Caldwell said it was important. She played one short concert at Carnegie Hall because it was the greatest concert hall in America and she wanted to stand on that stage at least once. She recorded one album of Chopin pieces because she wanted something beautiful to exist after she was gone. But the big contracts, the world tours, the reality TV shows and endorsement deals, she refused them all. The reporters asked her, "You could be rich, you could be the most famous pianist in the world. Why are you saying no?" Elena's answer was always the same. "I did not come back to music for money or fame. I came back because music is part of my soul. I do not want to turn it into a business. I want to keep it pure." What Alina did want was to teach. She talked to Professor Caldwell about her idea. She wanted to help children who were like her, children with talent but no money, children whose dreams might be crushed by poverty or tragedy. She wanted to make sure that what happened to her did not happen to anyone else. Professor Caldwell loved the idea. He helped her create a program at the Hartwell Conservatory. It was called the Elena Vasquez Music Initiative. It provided scholarships to talented students from poor families. It paid for instruments and lessons and everything else they needed. It made sure that no child would have to give up their dreams because of money. Alina taught masterclasses twice a week. She worked with the scholarship students, sharing everything she had learned about music and life. She was a patient teacher, kind but demanding. She pushed her students to work hard because she knew that hard work was the only way to succeed. But she also taught them something else, something more important than technique or theory. Your talent is a gift, she would tell them, but it is also a responsibility. The world needs beauty. The world needs music. You have the power to create something that can touch people's hearts. Never forget that. Never let anything take that away from you. 1 year after the gala, Alina was named Teacher of the Year by a national music education organization. She accepted the award at a ceremony in New York City. Her speech was simple and short. "I lost 30 years of my life to fear and silence," she said. "I do not want any child to lose even one day. Music saved my soul. Now I want to help it save others." The audience gave her a standing ovation. It was not as loud as the one at the gala, but it meant just as much. Maybe more. Alina's life settled into a new rhythm. She taught at Hartwell 3 days a week. She practiced every day, sometimes for hours. She gave occasional concerts, small ones, intimate ones, where she could feel close to the audience. She went home every night to Carlos, who still did not understand classical music but who loved her more than ever. She was happy. For the first time in 30 years, she was truly happy. On the second anniversary of the gala, Alina did something special. She went to the recital hall late at night, after everyone had gone home. The room was dark and quiet. The painted angels on the ceiling looked down at her with their gentle smiles. Alina sat at the Steinway piano, the same piano that had started everything. She lifted the keyboard cover and placed her fingers on the keys. She played the Cuban lullaby, the one her mother used to sing, the one she had played that first night, 2 years ago, when something inside her had woken up. When she finished, she sat in the silence for a long moment. Then she spoke into the darkness. "I kept my promise, Papa. I finally kept my promise." She could almost feel her father's presence in the room. She could almost hear his voice saying, "I always knew you would, my little star. I always knew." Alina smiled and wiped a tear from her cheek. Then she closed the keyboard cover and stood up. She was not a cleaning lady anymore. She was not invisible anymore. She was Alina Vasquez, pianist and teacher, a woman who had lost everything and found it again, a woman who had proven that it is never too late to follow your dreams. The music would always be inside her now. No one could ever take it away again. She walked out of the recital hall and into the night. Above her, the stars sparkled like tiny diamonds. Somewhere in the distance, a piano was playing. Maybe a student, practicing late, maybe another dreamer, just like she had been. Alina smiled and headed home. Tomorrow there would be lessons to teach and music to make and students to inspire. Tomorrow there would be new dreams to nurture and old wounds to heal. Tomorrow there would be life. Beautiful, complicated, wonderful life. But tonight, Alina just wanted to walk home under the stars and feel grateful for everything she had. She was 54 years old, and her life was just beginning. The end.